going to give a demo here of how to do some soft edges using acrylic paint, which is something that a lot of people really get frustrated with. And what I do is I put down all my dark values first, so the dark colors. And then I start layering lighter values like grays, and then the final values are the whites. And so once I've put down a dark layer, I'm going to use a brush. I like to use a Filbert. This brush is flat, has a thin edge and a wide edge, but you'll notice the bristles are curved at the top. And I like the mark that gives me. It gives me a nice soft mark. Right now I'm just working on a canvas panel. I've already painted something on it, so I can give you an idea of what I'm going to do here. But imagine I want to lighten this dark edge here and just make it a little bit lighter, but my paint is fully dry. I have no way of blending anymore. So what I'll do is I'll take a value lighter, so I'll take some of black and I'll add some white to it and mix those two together. And I push and wiggle my brush in the two colors. I turn it over and push and wiggle it again, because when I do that, I load the brush, but I also keep that paint thinner on the brush. So it's not super thick, it's really thin. And I might just wipe off any excess that I have, because what I want to do is I want to hold the brush fairly close to the canvas. It's actually parallel to the canvas right now. I can hold it overhand or whatever. And if I just lightly run it over the canvas and then just bring my brush up off the canvas at the end of the stroke, I just get this nice gradation. Now, once the brush really starts to dry out, now I can rub in some more of that gray along that bottom edge. So it's really important that you don't have it caked and thick paint up on the near the ferrule or ferrule, where that metal part is, where the bristles come out. So I want that brush dry. I don't want it wet with water. I just want paint, just pure paint on that brush. And then I can just lightly, gently feather over the area. And now it's hard to see in this light, but now I have a light gradation. If I want to go even lighter, again, I just lighten up my value by adding more white to my color. Again, I'm pushing and wiggling, just keeping it nice and thin, wiping off any excess. And again, I'm just feathering, holding the brush fairly parallel to the canvas. So I'm not straight up and down until I kind of want to go in with that really dry brush and just rub in some lighter value. So again, I can just get lighter and lighter. You'll see the canvas texture in there. And so really think about the prep before you paint. How do you want your surface to be? Are you painting on paper? Because if you paint on paper or wood, where it's really smooth, you're going to have a different mark when you try and dry brush. When you use something like canvas, where you have this weave, you're going to get the dry brush effect right on top of the weave. So anywhere the fabric actually comes up, the deposit of paint is just going to be along the top edge there. So if you're using a stroke, here's something else to keep in mind, like this, a round stroke, you're going to see that stroke. If you go straight, that's the stroke you're going to see with the dry brushing. So really think about the directionality of the stroke as you're working. So for example, in this painting I'm doing of a rose, if I have an area here that I want to lighten, I'll just get the right value. So let's lighten up my value a bit. And I might even need to wipe it off a little bit on my paper towel. I like using these blue shop towels. Then I'm just going to come in and I'm going to put the dry brushing in the same, using that same stroke direction of the petal, the direction of that value. So if I want to go even lighter, again, add more white. I'm going to dab off my brush a little bit. And again, just dry brush right along that edge. Now, if my brush is really dry, I can use it more up and down. Otherwise, I've got to keep it fairly parallel to the canvas to make sure I'm not depositing too much white. And now it's quite a bit lighter on that one edge. Typically, I don't recommend going darker with dry brushing, only because going darker with dry brushing leaves those black dots instead of white dots. So right now, I've got these, well, not dots, but these white patterns showing the weave of the texture. So it actually is dark dots underneath. What I really want is I want that light to be bigger and to sit nicely on top of the dark. But if I do the opposite and I take the dark and I apply it over top. Instead, I've got these little light dots underneath and lots of dark. It doesn't feel as nice. It doesn't look as nice either as if I used the light and ran it over top of the dark. So if I had instead, if I had to darken this area instead, I would just go in and paint the solid dark. So right now I'm just going to take the brush and wiggle it into those grooves to darken up that area. And then I'll dry brush over it with a gray value. I want it to be a little bit darker. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to just push and wiggle, turn it over, push and wiggle again, making sure that color is fully mixed on the brush. I don't want any dark marks on my brush because those will deposit. Wipe it off a little bit. And again, just holding the brush fairly parallel to the canvas, just dry brush that gray right over top of the black. Of course, I'm going to go right over my other light, so I'll just have to add in my light highlights again up here by dry brushing. But you can see now that just feels a little nicer than when the dark was overlapped on the light. So I just keep lightening. Again, push and wiggle. Turn the brush over, push and wiggle. Make sure that color's nice and mixed. Going over it again now, I'm going to get lighter. I'm going to maybe clean off my brush a little bit because I want to make sure I'm not going too small in a step from dark to light. And if I still have that dark on my brush, it just won't deposit the same way. So again, hold the brush parallel. Just rub it along that canvas. I'm using the thinner edge of the brush now to get a thinner mark. And so now I've got this nice transition from dark to light. And even if you can see all those dots in it from close up, from a distance, you won't notice it as much. You'll just notice that nice transition. So that's how I do my dry brushing to make a transition from dark to light by painting the dark first and then dry brushing the light on top of it. If you're working really quickly, you can work wet into wet, but I don't use any sort of mediums, so I like to take my time, not rush it, and just do dry brushing instead. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.